the Vajrayana, diamond vehicle, or Tantric Buddhism. The future of Buddhism lay improbably with individuals who, in the 9th to 12th centuries, walked out of the cosy scholastic monasteries and took to the road as Mahasiddhas, or spiritual wizards, often accompanied by a female consort. They practiced ritual magic together with meditation, an esoteric practice that represented perhaps the most extraordinary of all developments in Buddhism. This is Tantric Buddhism, or as it later became, the Vajrayana, the way of the diamond thunderbolt. It had started in the monasteries on the basis, particularly, of a philosophy called the Tathagatagarbha, the womb of enlightenment doctrine, which arose in about the 3rd century. This was the idea that all beings are possessed of the seed of Buddhahood, and that all we have to do is wake up to our own true nature. The Tantric initiate thus assumed the viewpoint of enlightenment itself. It was a startlingly daring innovation in Buddhist practice. At the same time, this overriding transcendental perspective distinguishes the Buddhist Tantra from the Hindu Tantra of the same period, in which magic could be used in the traditional way for secular ends. However, this renewal of Buddhism in India was brought to a brutal end in the 12th century, when Muslim invaders sacked the universities and put the monks in them to the sword. In doing so, they destroyed Buddhism in India at a stroke. Fortunately, well before this happened, the Mahayana had been transplanted to Central Asia and the Far East. Buddhism was well suited to expansion because of the absence of a central authority attempting to control the way it developed. And the Mahayana's emphasis on skillful means made it the ideal vehicle for the export of Buddhism. It grafted itself very easily onto the native culture, producing an extraordinary flowering of art wherever it went. The form in which it did this most vigorously was the Tantra, the Vajrayana, which travelled to China, Japan and Mongolia, but was embraced with most spectacular success in Tibet. Tantric Buddhism took the philosophical developments of Buddhism and concentrated on putting these ideas into practice. The spiritual quality it emphasized, to go with wisdom and compassion, is energy. And the spiritual ideal it emphasized, on top of that of the Bodhisattva, is the Mahasiddha, the great adept. As always in Buddhism, the emphasis is on skill, but now it is skill in a kind of magic, in ritual action by which one unlocks and calls forth all the energies one can in the pursuit of the overriding purpose of attaining Buddhahood in this very life. The Tantra works with the idea that we have a seamless connection with the universe. It proposes that the reason one discriminates between mind and matter, purity and impurity, is because one sees distinct entities which, in fact, have no ultimate validity. Instead of things, the Tantra recognizes simply energy, which is either flowing or blocked, dissipated or concentrated, positive or negative. And energies on one level affect energies on other levels. Manipulating them involves a kind of spiritual magic, or what is perhaps more appropriately called spiritual technology. But whereas technologists and magicians manipulate and transform the world outside themselves, the tantric magician or technologist, through various rituals and exercises, is invoking powers and energies at the very deepest levels of the mind to achieve a transformation or reorganization of the whole way the world and him or herself is experienced. The Buddhist path traditionally does this in a process of gradually bringing more and more of oneself into the realm of consciousness. The Buddhist Tantra uses symbols and rituals to do this in a much more wholesale way. Actions, sounds, visual images resonate precisely at unconscious levels, stirring up specific energies and forces in the hidden depths of the mind. A sense of resonance, of vibrancy, is the overriding quality of all aspects of Tantric Buddhism. The Vajrayana vibrates with energy, colour, sound, incense, activity, devotion, and stillness. A very straightforward example of this is the way an image of the Buddha communicates his message more clearly than words. It resonates with us at some level, and we respond to it. Something shifts within us. To take a more mundane example, there is a Japanese story about a rather ineffectual judo man who was told by his teacher just to meditate on the image of a great wave. So he did. He saw the wave gathering all the power of the ocean behind a deep green wall of water, driving to the shore with a composed insistence until at precisely the right moment it exploded irresistibly into the shingle of the beach. Needless to say, he was able to transform this image into his judo practice, developing powerful techniques, and that judo man became known as Great Wave. Tantric images work in this sort of way. Certain qualities are communicated at a non-rational level. Instead of a magic wand, the tantric initiate employs a vajra. With a wand, a frog may be transformed into a prince. With a vajra, the initiate's whole way of seeing is transformed, turned inside out. The vajra is a ritual implement in the shape of a thunderbolt. The Vajrayana, or the Tantra, provides a secret shortcut to enlightenment for those few whose compassionate resolve is not to be held up by the immeasurably long maturing process of the Bodhisattva path. It is as if instead of slowly filling a balloon with helium and then slowly floating up, one were instead to create a gigantic controlled explosion of rocket fuel. However, a rocket is a lot more complicated than a balloon. Many of the tantras, the sutras of the Vajrayana, that describe this secret path have now been published. But they remain secret because they cannot be practiced effectively without proper initiation and guidance. Some are dangerous, both psychically and spiritually. The Tantra is particularly concerned with making use of energy which is physically and emotionally tied up with sexuality, though this, of course, is where much of our delusion and craving is actually centered. But if that energy can be refined and redirected with the help of the breath and the subtle channels of the nervous system, then extraordinary psychophysical energies become available to provide a shortcut to enlightenment. This is not really something to try at home. However, from the traditions of the West, one might identify Dante's love for Beatrice as having a certain tantric element to it. The passion that destroys Francesca da Rimini in the Inferno is the same passion that leads Dante himself to paradise.